This is a composition think aloud example for using an introduction with a quote. Our purpose is that we will write an introductory paragraph for a research paper using a quotation as a hook. Our original brainstorming around the topic, our teacher has given us the topic of the U.S. government's role in the prevention of genocide. Our position is that we are for intervention by the U.S. government. The extent of that intervention is whatever is necessary to prevent or end genocides worldwide, and our reasons is that it's necessary because of our national value of respecting the rights of individuals, our responsibility as a world power, and the historical regret when we have chosen not to intervene. In this process, we'll be creating a draft of our introductory paragraph. An introductory paragraph will include a solid thesis statement, a hook, and some kind of transition between the two. We'll focus first on writing our thesis statement using the reasons that we gave. We're going to begin by writing our thesis statement. As you can see, we've copied our reasons from the first page to help us incorporate them into our thesis statement. On this page, you can see that we have a frame that we've set up for you to help you write your thesis statement. The frame is going to show you that you need to have the subject that you're speaking about, the action that should be taken or the knowledge to be gained, in this case the action to be taken, and then you're going to lay out a clear, concise blueprint of your main reasons. We'll begin down below by noting first of all our subject. In this case, the U.S. government. And then we're going to be noting our action that we should be taking. After we've noted the action, we're going to note our reasons that we believe that. Knowing that I need to make it parallel, I'm going to make this an it statement, and a verb. And so it is our responsibility and again another it and verb, and I want to keep my verbs active. Now looking at this, I notice that the it and the verb does not refer back to any antecedent. And so what I need to do is change the it to involvement. And I may eventually want to deal with the redundancy that then occurs due to my use of the word involvement 3 times, but we'll wait until the revision process for that. So I'm going to take my thesis statement back to the draft page, and I'm going to add it to the end of the draft. Now that I've got my thesis statement as part of my draft, I need to go to the hook that I'm intending to use. It's a quote by a Holocaust survivor, and the quote essentially tells us that we need to take sides. Neutrality only helps the oppressor. So we're going to begin by copying the quote, and because it's stated in a way that's better than what I can state in a paraphrase, I'm going to go ahead and use the direct quotation. However, it's not enough just to put the quote in by itself. I have to frame the quote so that it fits well into the writing. I also need to make sure that I interpret the quote and explain how it fits into my paper. So I'm going to begin by I want to use a very active verb, and I'm not sure that stated will end up being that verb, but I need to transition into my quotation. And so I've got Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel stated that we must always take sides. And I think I want the word that in there as well. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Now I need to transition from my quote to my thesis. And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to look at possible frames to use in that transition. Note that I just told you we want to interpret for the reader what the quote means and how it fits into our paper. And so I look at the top two potential frames as being possible frames for use. Notice that I can use frames that say the author meant and then what the author meant and then show the connection to the thesis. Or I can say this means that. I think in this case I want to refer back to my author's name. And so I'm going to use the first frame. And I'm going to do that right here. Wiesel meant that by remaining inactive, governments around the world essentially side with those who At this point, I'm a little bit stuck. I'd like to use the verb perpetuate, but I'm not sure that it really fits into what I want to say here. What I really want to point out is that it allows the people to oppress those who are weaker. So Wiesel meant that by remaining inactive, governments around the world essentially side with those who would take advantage of weaker people in their countries. What I need to do now is I need to close the gap between the discussion about what genocide is and how our lack of inaction essentially signals to those other governments who are perpetuating the genocides that it's okay, and our belief that the US government should be involved in whatever manner necessary to end genocides. Tools again. As I think about it, I've only really provided the interpretation of the quote. And so in order to make that connection, I need to include the connection between the interpretation and my thesis. And so Wiesel meant that by remaining inactive, governments around the world essentially side with those who would take advantage of weaker people in their countries. Instead of using the word but, I'm going to go back to my frame and use the word which would put governments who refuse to act in the face of genocide in the same place as those who oppress or kill others. I believe I've successfully transitioned to my thesis, but let's go ahead and reread it. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel stated that we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Wiesel meant that by remaining inactive, governments around the world essentially side with those who would take advantage of weaker people in their countries, which would put governments who refuse to act in the face of genocide in the same place as those who oppress or kill others. U.S. government should be involved in whatever manner necessary to end genocide because involvement demonstrates our national value of respecting the rights of individuals Involvement is our responsibility as a world power, and involvement allows us to deal with the regret of not being involved in past genocides. I realize now that my last reason does not truly indicate what I want to indicate, was that we have regret for not being involved in ending past genocides, not being involved in the past genocides. And I've also noted a few other things that will need revision in the next draft of my introduction, including statements that seem to be missing pieces, such as the beginning of my thesis statement. There seems to be a little bit of a lack of transition into that sentence, but I'll address those in the next draft.